What's going on, man? Fed, what's up, man? What's going on? Look, I got a freaking dog's ass right here in the frame. Live from Tuesday night, it's Sharp Guy ATX from Austin, freaking Texas, baby. What's going on, Mark? Pocket razors, what's happening? I was over there watching Tim's School of Fish, and they had old Andy Armstrong on there. Oh. So what's going on, everybody? I got a new knife today, which means I've got to get rid of a knife. No doubt. 48-hour Monday for sure. Jump down. Thank you. Yeah, it was a good chat. You know, it's one of those anytime you get to listen to somebody who's been in the industry as long as he has, you always come away from it with something. And it's always kind of cool. I think one of the things I enjoy the most is the insights that you get from, you know, them talking about the behind the scenes stuff. Like for instance, they were talking about the sponsorship for Blade Show, which I'm sure comes with some perks like where you get to have your booth and things like that. People don't know who Fed Harrison is. So what have I been up to? Wow, mostly school. It's been a very stressful week. I goofed my final last week and then had to go back and do it over again. And then once I got that done, I think the writing was on the wall that I needed to either upgrade my machine, my computer, or get something more modern. The computer I'm streaming from right here is, I think it's a 2016 Dell, but it's top of the line. I mean, it's touchscreen, everything on it works. In fact, the only issue I've had with it up until now was, I think the 5 key sticks a little bit, and I tried to figure out how to resolve that. I blew air in it and everything, but short of taking the key off. But other than that, I've never had any problems with this thing at all. And then I started doing these labs, and they had me in the back room changing stuff around. And it was kind of one of those where if the pictures don't match the directions that they're giving you, you should probably stop and figure out why. And I just figured, well, I'll figure out how to get there myself. I mean, so I went and did some things I probably shouldn't have done. But anyway, I got it all back to where it's supposed to be, and went and have the old laptop tuned up, and we'll see if it'll last the rest of this year, and then maybe next year I can flip a coin between getting a new laptop and getting another custom knife. I'm hooked, and I don't know if anybody saw it or not, but this here is the prototype of the Astral. And over on his Instagram, edgybladeworks.com, he made another one. and he's taking it to Blade Show. And it's got that ting just like this one does, man. I think the scales are more of a brown than an orange yellow, but it's so killer. It's such a good knife. I've been carrying this thing around. Not that I've been doing a whole lot, like I said. I mean, mostly school stuff, but it's one of those. So just to give you an idea, and some of you guys are going to relate to this. What's up, Midnight? Who else popped in? The other night, I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. And when I came back to get back in bed, I have a little night light over by the bedside table. And I picked this knife up and stood there next to the bed for like 5 minutes, flicking the knife. Dogs are looking at me like I'm crazy. What's he doing? Hey, pocket razors, you're really going to like this. I mentioned when we were talking a couple days ago about a deal I made, and I ended up with a Mannix 2 with Met and Boss scales and a custom deep carry clip. And I got it for a really, really good bro price. And it was kind of sketchy for a while because the dude didn't like reply to me at first, but it ended up working out. It was all, explainable. They had some pretty bad storms out there in Tennessee, so it was understandable that it took them a couple days to get to the, they were like, had no power and everything else. Yeah, Mettenbosch, you have my attention. Like I said last week, I have a Mannix 2 lightweight that I Rex 45. I need to tone that light down a little bit. Hold on just a second. What's up? I think that's going to be a little bit better. It's still pretty bright. I'm going to have to work on that. But anyway, so my only complaint about this knife is that the handles on it were just too light. What's going on, Joe? They were just too light for me. I really didn't care for it. I like the FRN and a lot of other Spydercos. I'm not a FRN hater, but on this particular knife with a blade that I like that much, I just didn't care for the setup. It was just too light for me. That's for me. So I made the deal with a guy from over at Rocky Top Customs there in Knoxville. And he apparently does some pretty amazing work. So I don't have any knives with Zerk. I don't have any knives that have been, well, I've got one. I mean, obviously this is custom. So, but where did it go? Oh, it's right here. Duh. So I'm not a big on-camera unboxer. I mean, I will once in a while, but I don't have the patience for it. I already had to wait for the mailman. So these are Metten Boss. I think they're called Oil Slick Zerk scales. The blade on this is M4. It's a beast. I mean, this thing has got freaking some heft. I mean, this thing has got some heft. But here's what I ended up getting on this deal. Let me tell you, the action, it's totally 100% broke in for sure. There's a couple little scratches on the clip, but I bought this to carry, and I can tell you this isn't something you're going to just fling in your pocket if you're wearing like cargo shorts. This thing's got some heft to it. It'll make you go right quite a bit if you're not careful. If you had a couple drinks, it'll definitely change your navigational direction finder. This is a heavy knife, but I like a heavy knife. The feel that this knife has in hand is pretty damn awesome. So the one thing that I didn't get out of the Manix 2 with the Rex 45, I definitely got out of this, and I am digging this knife. But like I said, here in Texas, this is a jeans carry knife. This is a knife to stick in the inside pocket of your jacket or something, but it's definitely got some heft to it. So you're definitely not going to tuck this in your gym shorts. But the action on it's phenomenal. Drop shut with the so I'm digging that. So I'll have this Manix 2 lightweight. I'll have that up in the Discord there in the next couple days. Yeah, winner, huh? That was for that. Was that for like the what do they call it? The Gray Ghost Beaver Creek Barlow? Last year, I think it was over on Thrifty Knaf. But I won in the little drawing over there on Thrifty Knaf and won this little Beaver Creek Barlow. And I'll tell you what, out of all my Barlows, and I've got quite a few. The one thing I will say, these Beaver Creeks, man, that walk and talk's for real. Those things are so snappy. I don't remember what this one's called, but this one's the same thing. When you let that thing go, you better get out the way. That one was a gift from my friend Big Red. I agree, Todd. So, um, I got that knife in today. And I think that might be it for a while. No, that's not true. I have a blade coming in from Josh Branson that him and Caden customized. A damn designs. Pretty cool looking. I'm eager to see how it turned out. Yeah, I found for me, and I tried 4 or 5 different bushcrafting knives. That buck that I showed last week, that moose skinner, I think that's one of the main reasons why I like that, and I made that my bushcraft knife and my camping knife. Is simply because when you give that thing a swing, you know, to hit something, it'll do what it's supposed to do. Um, in some cases, you don't even have to baton. You can just, if it's standing upright, you can just smack it and it'll come right off. Kind of halfway between a bushcraft knife and a machete, but it's S35 VN. But that was the main thing with that knife also is it just had that heft, that nice heft that when you were doing stuff around camp and stuff, you didn't have to exert as much energy because the blade on it was heavy enough that it did a lot of the work for you. And like, I don't have to worry about filleting fish with, my bushcraft or anything like that. And I'm not a big hunter. So what's going on, Joe? So, and there's another one. See, I've kind of, because it's already paid for. Um, Keith did a Skinner for me. Hey, Palmer. Keith did a Skinner for me and sent it off to Joe. And Joe's doing kind of a one of those cross carry slips for me that goes on the belt. And sticking with my colors, orange and black. But I was telling you guys last week, I think I showed you a couple weeks ago, my slip that I keep my Benchmade Grizzly Ridge in. And I thought about going a couple of different ways with it, but that's the way that I like to carry it the most. So I thought, and like everything nowadays comes with like a clip that you put on your belt. And I wanted something that I could actually put on my belt and leave on my belt. Well, after I had my little heart thing last year, I pretty much quit smoking, vaping, nothing. And I haven't smoked since like 2011, but I vaped and I quit vaping. And then about 8 weeks ago, for whatever reason, I don't even know why, I bought a can of Zen, which turned into a can every 2 or 3 days. And now there's this Zen shortage that apparently is happening because the Zen never asked or got permission from the FDA or whatever. So there's this Zen shortage. Well, I went into my local gas station, my backup gas station, because my other gas station was out, and he had a 5-pack, but I've been paying like $6 a can, and now it's up to $8 a can because it's starting to get scarce. So I decided when I get to the end of this roll, I'm just going to quit and go back to, because even every 3 days, I mean, that's still $15 a week. 4 mg, six, baby. On nicotine pouches. Well, whoever's second in line is fixing to get some serious business. Well, and that's funny because I've got like 2 or 3 more, and then I gave one to my daughter for her camp setup, and she's got several other blades as well. But that's a great camp knife. Then one of the next things on my list is I want to get my mom is like half Norwegian and half German, and I've got German knives, but I don't have anything from Norway. So I'm probably going to pick up a nice little Hella Fixie. I just don't know which one. And I kind of started browsing, but I haven't really started researching just because it's down the road a ways. Norwegian? Oh, it's way more complicated than that, bro. My dad came off the Fort Peck Indian Reservation in northeast Montana. His mom was full-blooded Sioux, and his dad was full-blooded Japanese. And they met after Grandpa got out of the internment camp. And Grandma was running Canadian whiskey across the border from Canada, buying it cheap in Canada, and then driving it across the border and selling it for a markup. And they were modern day Bonnie and Clyde, living on the res, running whiskey across the Canadian border up there. And so yeah, so it's Norwegian with Japanese and Sioux Indian. So give that one a whirl. And I've got quite a few different Native American pieces. I've got quite a bit of German pieces. Japanese, I've got all kinds. I've got Spyderco. I've got some Higa no Kamis. I've got this vintage toy knife from Japan. It's actually got a real steel blade on it. But then the handles on it are like die-cast aluminum, like they used to make Hot Wheels out of back in the 50s. But I just thought it was kind of interesting that nothing in my collection, I've got nothing from Norway or any of the I guess I do. I've got Switzerland. Yeah, that's what I did, Todd. I just took like four different fixies with me each time I camped over the last couple of years, and then kind of just narrowed it down. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that my buck won't do, but there's a lot of things that will do too. And it's not like I don't have a pocket knife in my pocket. I mean, when I go camping, I'm just like everybody else. I bring 3 or 4 pocket knives with me. So I'll tell you a quick story. This is when my dad joined the Navy during Vietnam and went to war. So when he was really little, he was with my grandma, and life was crazy. I think he's got like 11 or 12 half brother and sisters. So you can imagine it was a crazy life. So I think he was with my grandma until he was about 5, and then he ended up in the orphanage on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation, and then he got fostered out. So the grandparents that I knew growing up were the Freedies, and the Freedies owned a dairy farm in the same town that my mom was from, Chinook, Montana. My dad ended up working on that dairy farm, so they would take all these kids and foster them, and then they would get them educated and send them to school. But then they also had to work on the farm. So the Freedies had, 5 or 6 kids that they were fostering, and then each of those 5 or 6 kids also had to pull their own weight, as well as going to school. Well, one of the things that if you've ever been around an Indian reservation, you'll find is that they're pretty freaking racist people. And my dad, being only half Indian and then half Japanese, whether he was in town in foster or whether he was on the res in the orphanage, he got picked on. So he was always fighting, always in trouble. And he had a good run with the Freedies. I think he was fostered by that family for 4 or 5 years. But then he was getting in so much trouble that he got kicked out of school because of all the fighting. And it's kind of funny. A lot of those same kids that used to beat him up and jump him and, give him hell all the time, he was friends with right up until the time he died. But they shipped him back to the reservation and put him back in the orphanage. So on when he was 16 years old, getting ready to turn 17, he knew that if he joined the military, that he could get out of the orphanage a year early. So he decided he'd rather go to Vietnam than stay in the orphanage for another year. So he signed up for the Navy, got accepted, and before he got shipped off, the last thing he had the reservation do was change his last name. So his last name was supposed to be Kitano Shyface. Kitano Shyface. So he didn't want to go into the Navy with a name like that because that heritage had given him all kinds of problems growing up. So the best I can figure is he must have gone into the history books and found that there was a general during Korea and I think Vietnam, but his name was Robert Gaylor. And it's the only other Gaylor of any real significance that I could find that he would have been able to come up with that name because it's such a strange name to just Chief Dennis. No. See, this is pre, back then it was like stumps, not holes in trees. The glory hole thing just came about, after I started trucking. So Pops had the reservation change his last name from Kitano Shyface to Gaylor, Galer. So I grew up with the last name that starts out with gay. So you got to get pretty thick skin when you start out with the name Gaylor because every single freaking dude all the way until you're in college is going to make fun of it, poke fun of it. So you better either learn to have a sense of humor or get some thick skin pretty quick. So, but one of the funniest things to me is Pops, kind of pushed his heritage aside. But then as he climbed up through the ranks in the Navy, he became a chief. So all of a sudden, being Indian was a really cool thing for him because the whole chief thing kind of, so until he retired, he'd retired Chief Warrant Officer 4. But he never went back to the reservation, not once. And I think he kept contact with at one point he was keeping contact with 5 or 6 of the brothers, but mostly with Uncle Robert. Robert went in the Army at the same time my dad went in the Navy. So they both kind of got out because of the military. and the rest of them kind of stayed up in the rural parts of Montana, and eventually they leaked over into Oregon. But quite a crazy group of people, man. There was a family reunion out in Rosebud, Oregon, where two of the uncles had a shootout, and this was at a campground where the river ran through, and one of them had a freaking compound bow, and the other one had a 38, and they were like hiding behind people's campers and stuff, and I mean, and they were both drunk as a skunk. But it's just kind of one of those things when you're like 16 years old and you see stuff like that, you kind of go, "Wow, dude." What's up, my journey? One last piece of the story, and then I'll move on. One of those uncles, when I was 18 years old, I was getting in some trouble, and I'm not sure if he did it for this reason or if it was just convenient, because we were going from, at the time, my mom and brother and sister were living in Montana. I was living in Seattle, and then my dad was still in the Navy, and he was on his last, I think that's when he was still stationed on a ship. I think that might have been his last ship that he was stationed on, but he was based out of Seattle, Bremerton. And we were on our way back from visiting my mom, and we stopped into Walla Walla to the state penitentiary. Chef Rocky, what's going on? We stopped into Walla Walla to the state penitentiary to visit my Uncle George. George Walks on Top. And good old George Walks on Top was doing 25 to life because a couple of fellas were getting fresh with his girlfriend while he was in the bathroom at a bar. So he waited for them to come out. He beat the shit out of them and then put them in the trunk of their own car and then drove it off a cliff and killed both of them. And the reason he got manslaughter instead of murder was because it wasn't something that he planned out. It was something that he did out of a fit of rage. So my dad takes me to visit old Uncle George there at the Walla Walla State Penitentiary. And I can honestly tell you that my life completely changed. I'm talking 18 years old. I maybe was in, I did like a little week and a half stretch in a county jail, but nothing major. But I was getting myself into some trouble. And I'll never forget the sound of those freaking doors, those steel bars closing behind you when you go in. And I'll tell you what, it did change the way that I thought after that. And we had a cool visit. We hung out for like an hour and 15 minutes, and we were in the same room as him. There was no window with phones or anything. But I'll tell you what, I kind of changed my direction after that visit with old Uncle George Walks on Top. And every time I eat an apple, for some reason, I think of Walla Walla, Washington. Every time I eat an apple, I think of old Uncle George. He's still in there. He's still in there. He's got to be getting close to 80. So, but you know, back in the 80s, right after he wasn't sentenced yet, so he was going through the court process. But I thought it was really strange that when my grandmother died, the prison system released him for 4 days so that he could go attend the funeral. And I'll never forget. I was I don't know. I was like 16, and you know, everybody's all very solemn and, you know, somber and everything. And George knows he's getting ready to go to prison, and he rolled in with his girlfriend on one arm, and then there was a hooker on the other arm, and I mean, she looked like one too. I mean, but I'll tell you what, I'd never seen one up close and personal, so it was very intriguing to me at the time. But I kind of realized the direction he was going. You know, after the couple-day furlough, he was going to go back behind bars. But I didn't know what had happened at the time. I didn't know what he was in trouble for. You know, parents didn't want to share that kind of info. But yeah, the Indian side of the family was crazy, and the other side, they were a different kind of crazy, you know. But I think everybody's families are, unique and in their own way, sane and crazy at the same time. Um, we traveled around all the time after, because dad being in the military. So um, we were only exposed to the Montana life and the Oregon life, every year and a half or 2 years when we came through for the holidays or when dad was getting restationed or whatever. Does anyone know if I didn't see anything? He's still on the Sharif is still on the schedule, but I have seen him starting to do some more stuff. But I think he's getting ready to. Isn't everyone getting ready to? No, it's not time to get ready to go to Blade Show. That's in June, right? Isn't Blade Show like the first week of June? I really like this kimono. Another big knife. I put a. Maddie was asking. He was asking about this knife here that I got last week. This little DNA. So I messaged him back and asked him if he had anything to trade. And he's ghosting me. It's cool, but I like the bigger knife. So I'm not a big prepper guy or anything, but something that I have picked up from that community, and I just wanted to pass this on just because I think it's a good idea regardless. Um, One of the things that my mom did when I was growing up was every week she would buy a roll of quarters, and she had a big 5-gallon water jug, and she'd put that roll of quarters into the water jug. And then when the water jug got full, she would have some, you know, thing that she was going to either buy or trip we were going to take or down payment on a car. But that was her little way of saving and everything. So, but one of the things that I've been doing is every week picking up an ounce of silver and just putting it in my collection. And right now, the value of silver is pretty high, but I've got some little pieces of gold, but I like these big, giant $20 pieces of silver. I'm set up here for about 10 days, and then I'd have to move further out of town. But I think for the first 10 days, staying where you're at is probably a pretty good idea. So that was my main goal. Right? Well, if the dollar keeps going south, the price of gold and silver is going to keep going north. We'll see what happens. So what else? What else? Earlier tonight, I was sharpening on this Onza. little USA fixed blade company out of San Diego. All these are made out of like files. But I finally had to put a new edge on it. But this has been one of my favorite carving knives when I'm really wanting to move some wood. And I think it's really just because they put that little swedge right there and I can get leverage. So when and it's a different kind of pull where you're not like pulling towards my thumb, but I'm pulling across the top there. But this knife, I wore it on my belt for a little while. I really like it. That micarta is just, I think the guy who had it before me, either he had some really sweaty hands or he was a mechanic, because I think that these scales have got so much grease and oil on them. It's freaking almost creates a little bit of a grip to it. But this is one of the coolest. In fact, I got this when I was was helping my next door neighbor move her mom from Tucson to Austin. And I picked this up at a little knife store there in Tucson. Used. Speaking of Ghosty, I just mentioned you, man. I sent you a message about this. Drink. I was actually looking on their website about a month ago for something a little bigger. And the cool thing about these is they're very affordable too. Hey, Randy, what's going on, man? Carco. Good to see you, Randy. Sleep well, my friend. So here you go, Kyle. Here's some local stuff. When I lived in Indiana, from 93 to 2009, my wife's aunt was connected to the Indiana Pacers. I wasn't a big basketball fan before I moved to Indiana. Football guy, baseball guy, pretty much. That was about it. Bowling. But her aunt was one of the two women who came up with dance teams for the ABA and the NBA. So the Pacemates were the first dance team for a professional basketball team. And there used to be a coach at Indiana back in the day named Slick Leonard. His wife was Nancy. Nancy and Sandy, my wife's aunt, they came up with the Pacemates. Well, back in the ABA days, she was also a director of media for the Pacers. And during that time, they won 3 ABA championships. So her aunts got 3 rings from the ABA championships back in the day. So, like I said, I wasn't a big basketball fan, but over time, we had so much behind the scenes access to the Pacers organization, to the NCAA basketball, and things like that, that over time I became a fan. So we'll leave some of those stories for another day because there's some really cool stories. But one of the things that I picked up over my days living in Indiana was a hatred for the Knicks. And I mean a hatred, like the kind of hatred that like Peyton Manning has for Tom Brady. It was just one of those where, I mean, if you were a Pacers fan, you just hated the Knicks. And once again, the Pacers are about as deep as they've been in I can't tell you how long. And here we are having trouble with the Knicks again. Man. But anyway, like I said, I'll tell you some stories for another day. But yeah, pretty cool. It was kind of exciting. She had no connection whatsoever to football. But because of where I lived on West Side, we lived right over by the Colts complex. I met a lot of football players organically just because they were moving around that part of town where I lived. So that was kind of cool. That was definitely kind of cool. Tina, what's going on? Yeah. The other one was my wife's company in Indiana would fly all of their they'd fly all of their clients in from all around the country for the Indianapolis 500. And they would have these big extravagant dinners, and there'd be like guests who would come and speak who were drivers in the race and everything. But it was always amazing when they brought these people in from out of town, how they could move people around with helicopters and private jets. And you see the people who are showing up for these, and then you realize how much, how deep those pockets really are. Discord now. I don't check as much as used too often since they are rarely used. You gotta slide a note into my glory hole like usual, sir. Well, I kind of felt like Cheapskate was starting to get jealous of me sliding things into your glory hole. Thought you said it was an open marriage. Fucking Maddie. Did you go to Kings Island there, Bettina? Rode his first real roller coaster. He was jacked. It's one of those where it's like, you know, how we just have such access to phones and stuff now to record stuff. Let me see if I can put something up here. Because there were a couple people asking, so let's do this. What if all right, so I've got Maddie's little package ready to go. But if you want a couple stickers, shoot me an email and just put stickers in the subject line, and hit me with your address, and I'll get the first round out. You guys will be the first. What's up, Terry? We were just talking about our stickers. Marty has a little package. Hey, did you guys see Maddie finally got his Megaron figured out? Crispy, crispy, crispy critter. All right. So, back when I was a kid, I had a different addiction than pocket knives. I used to collect baseball cards. Before I turned like 17, I got out of the business and sold them all. Wish I had them back, but still a big baseball fan, always have been. But I've been watching these, they call them breaks, where you buy in and everyone buys in, and then you either randomly or you get to choose your team. You buy into these breaks for these baseball card boxes that are like hella expensive. And it's basically like playing the lottery. You're hoping to hit like the big names. So I've been watching and watching and watching, and you know, I'm like, cool, this is kind of fun, you know, watching these guys, you know, win, hitting on these big cards and everything. And so this morning, at like 2 o'clock in the morning, there was only like 35 people in this live, and he was doing the last set for the night. And there was like 16 cases of cards. It was worth like, I don't know, $2,500 worth of baseball cards he was going to open up. So basically, he was trying to sell these spots for like $90 a piece, $100 a piece. And he was starting to have a hard time, but there was still some good teams up on there. So I jumped in and created an account on Whatnot. And as they were getting towards the end, there was still like 3 or 4 good teams that hadn't been picked. So one of the bids went for like $56. And I was like, all right. So I clicked on it. Nobody countered me. So I ended up getting it for it was going to $5 increments, like $61. I got this spot for. And this guy's going through, and I I'm not kidding you. I got the Los Angeles Angels was my team. And out of these boxes of cards that this guy pulled, I ended up getting a Rod Carew autograph card, 3 other autograph cards from the Los Angeles Angels. But then I got a 5th autograph card, and it was a Mike Trout autograph card that's apparently worth like over $1,000. So I haven't been messing around or playing this, and all of a sudden I decided to go ahead and try it because nobody was participating. And once again, I got lucky as hell. Rod and Trout, there you go. Maybe that's what it was. It was a fishing connection. But it was number 13 of 20. So apparently it's in pretty high demand, and apparently this guy's doing pretty well. Going to be a Hall of Famer, I guess. But I could see how that could get really addicting really quick. Dude, the only one winning more than me is Charlie Sheen, baby. Well, I can tell you that at times, Maddie, it's been like, you know how you get like sezzle to the point where you've got like a payment every single week because you're so sezzled out. A lot of my life was crazy like that, but it does make for some awesome stories. 3 marriages doesn't really help when it comes to saving for retirement. So I don't know. Maybe I'll have to move back to the res and pitch a teepee, baby. The way things are going in the city, it might not be a bad idea. So when my pops passed away, I was the oldest. I was the oldest living male. So it automatically went over to male after my mom was eliminated. My mom was eliminated from owning land on the reservation because she had no Indian blood whatsoever. If she had so much as a 64th or 132nd, I mean, she would have been able to own land on the reservation. But because she had 0 native blood, she couldn't own land. So I inherited all of the land from my family. And it's really weird because none of it is like big enough to do anything with. But several of the pieces of land are water access ways. So those are very valuable. And a lot of the land on the reservation gets leased out for like cattle and stuff like that. But I thought it was really interesting to see, but the difference between being a landowner and being just somebody of blood is a big difference because you actually have a say in what happens for with the tribe. But I just can't imagine living there. So here's something interesting, Maddie. If I were to build a property on the reservation and leave for any amount of time, say go on vacation for a week, because of the fact that I'm only a quarter and I'm living on their land, I would probably be burned out before I got back from vacation. So here's the interesting thing. There's a lot of places that do have good casinos going on, and they have figured it out. Who are the guys down in Florida who own the Hard Rock? Man, they really figured out the casino system. Now they own the entire Hard Rock setup. The Seminoles, yep, they got it going on. They figured it out. They're one of the first ones, and now they've been schooling everybody else on how to do it. But if you've never been up into that Montana territory, so gambling's been legal in bars and stuff up there for decades and decades. There's always been poker rooms, but as long as I mean, probably from the time I was a teenager, I always remember the bars had those poker machines, and they weren't necessarily slot machines, but they were basically the same thing. But gambling was already legal, so unless you had like a destination, um, it's really, not a big draw for them to try and promote gambling up there. If you get over into the Dakotas, now if you get over into South Dakota by Sturgis and go up to Deadwood, that's a little different. They start putting some casinos and stuff in out there, but not really so much in Montana. It's kind of sad. I went through Cherokee, and I thought with them having, all of the casino and everything, that would have really improved that community. And I'd driven through there like 20 years before, and came back through probably 5 or 6 years after they got the casino, and it was exactly the same as it was before. A bunch of poor people. And then I thought one of the saddest things was, as you go down Main Street in there in North Carolina on the res, and half the stuff they're selling as souvenirs on the main drag was stuff made in China. And I just thought that was, I mean, you could get like your kid a bow and arrow and a tomahawk and a headdress, and all of it would be made in China. Country clubbing. A couple of the guys that I bowl with on Wednesday, brothers, asked me if I wanted to go out and play with them on Wednesdays after bowling. And I haven't played like regular golf in more than a decade. I mean, I've played in a bunch of scrambles and stuff like that, but I mean, I haven't gone out and played my own ball around the course in quite a while. But these guys aren't, they're not bowling in the summer league. I'm bowling with them again next fall, but I'm going to go ahead and take them up on it. But I need to go out to the driving range next week and hit a bucket of balls and just get that muscle memory going again. Yes. Great stress relief. Although I will tell you something funny. So my chest has healed up real good, and I had to go back a couple of weeks ago and see the thoracic surgeon who did the actual open heart surgery. And he had me doing some stretches and stuff, and I was like, yeah, I've got my bowling average up to the highest it's ever been, and we're talking, and he's like really happy and everything. And like I said, he's stretching me this way and stretching me that way and up and down. And I got home and did some chores, laid down, took a nap. And that evening at dinner, I made burgers, and I was trying to open a new jar of freaking dill pickle chips for the burgers. And I got into it like this, and I'm trying to give her, and I'm not kidding you, right through here, dude. I pulled something, and it had to be related to the heart surgery, but I'm guessing it also was because he was moving me around and stretching me in all these different directions. And after you've had a big event with your heart, yeah, I keep rubbing it. After you've had a big event, when you have a sharp pain anywhere close to where your heart is, it initially gives you a big spook. And then I figured out quite quickly that it was just, so I freaking pulled a muscle opening a fucking jar of pickles. And if there's nothing that explains 57 for me so far, that's probably it right there. But I went out the next day and bowled and shot a what was it that day? 647. So just a little twing from the surgery. I'm sure I'll have another one when I go out to the driving range next week. So Marty, we'll talk. Because I do feel that I need to give you an opportunity before this possibly ends up in the trade them if you got them box. Yeah, definitely not your taxpayer dollars. Yeah, it's crazy some of the stuff they do when the big man gets around, huh? So it took us like when I was in the limo biz for the first 5 or 6 years, our office was at the Austin airport on the lower level near where baggage claim was. And it took like 2 or 3 different presidential visits for us to realize how crazy they get sometimes. But they would shut down all of the like all of our cell phones, all of our tablets, everything would go down for like a half hour, 45 minutes when they arrived, and for like a half hour, 45 minutes when they departed. And like I said, it took 3 or 4 times for us to figure it out, but man, they were shutting us all the way down so nobody could mess with anything at all when they were bringing Air Force One in and out. But they go through quite the freaking. Well, drink. The funny thing is I started, and I was a smoker because I was in the trucking biz. So almost all that 25 years I drove a truck, I smoked pack a day. But the funny thing is I started feeling issues with my heart in my early 30s. And then when I go in and have it checked out, they'd be like, "Oh no, everything's fine," you know. And then I had my first heart attack when I was 39. But the crazy thing is I've always been in good shape. I've always had a pretty decent diet. Um, I mean, as good as you can. Um, but it was that smoking. It was all that cigarette smoking. That's what got me. And I haven't had a cigarette since like 2010. I still vape, but this isn't nicotine. Chef Rocky 39. Well, here's what I can tell you, and this is just a personal observation from being in the black car business in Austin. And Austin's the capital, so we get a lot of politicians moving around. The more hated you are, the more security you get. And to prove my point, not so long ago, I would say probably about in the last 12 months, Hillary Clinton made a visit to Austin, Texas. And from the airport into downtown, they literally removed every car from the freeway and allowed complete access to only their motorcade. And I noticed from where I was at, where I got stopped and I wasn't allowed to proceed, I had a pretty good vantage point of where they came off of the highway and went on to the next highway. And right at that intersection, there's an IRS building, and there were 3 or 4 sharpshooters up on top of that building. Just what? So I know that a lot of people don't like her, but Austin's kind of a purple city in a very red state, and they definitely. I've seen presidents come in and not get as much security as Hillary got. They were just watching the grassy knoll. There's a lot of people watching grassy knolls right now, I imagine. For the amount of years I did it, I'm grateful for all that. And you know the interesting thing, Todd? My mom, she smoked for so she smoked for probably 20 something years. And the only reason she quit was because she switched over from being in the restaurant business to being in the hair business. And when she switched over to the hair business, she just thought that it was hurting her business because she always smelled like cigarettes. So that's what finally gave her the motivation to quit. And something kind of interesting, she saw her tips increase by over 20% in the 6 months after she quit smoking cigarettes. And since I quit back in 2010, I can tell you, somebody gets in my vehicle who's been smoking immediately. And I've got 2 really good cigars, but I haven't lit them up. I just didn't want to do it. I think I'm going to donate them. They're still pretty fresh and moist. And the funny thing is, Chef, I mean, for the longest time, like when I was a little kid, perfect example. The first thing that my mom would do when she woke up, when she was in the restaurant business, because she would work until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, definitely drink water. Congrats for sure. But the first thing that my mom would do is light up a cigarette while she was still laying in bed. Even to the point where, as my childhood memories come flowing back to me, that's how we knew mom was awake, was that first. And she wasn't a lighter person. She was always having a book of matches. So the first thing you would get was that sulfur smell. And then shortly after that sulfur smell was that first hit off that cigarette smell. And slowly throughout the house, that smell would, permeate throughout the house, and we would know mom was awake. And yeah, we were Gen X, man. That's how I got my adventurous crazy side is I was responsible for raising my brother and sister. Because my dad was gone half the time on cruises and everything. And then mom worked late. So she would be gone a couple hours after we got home from school. So I'd have to watch out brother and sister and then cook and clean and, what have you, and this, that, and the other. But our house was the party house. That's what ended up happening. But it was always clean when mom got home. That's right. We always knew we had till midnight and we had to get everything cleaned up. Yeah, congrats to you, Kyle, for quitting too. Well, cigarettes, they say it's a gateway, but I'll tell you something kind of funny. So when I lived on the same base where JB works at up in Silverdale, Washington, the Naval Submarine Base, our house was on the corner on the officers' housing. We had the corner house. And one morning I went out to the bus stop and I overheard a couple of the older teenagers. I think I was probably in the seventh grade, just started junior high. And I overheard a couple of the older teenagers mention that they sure wish they had a cigarette and that, you know, talking about it. So I knew we had about 5 or 10 minutes. So I went across the lawn because that's where the bus stop was on the corner. I went across our lawn and went in the back door and got a pack of Mom's Marlboro 100s out of the freezer, brought them out and gave them to these guys. And that ended up being my end, man. Those guys from that point forward, even though I told them, and I made excuses after that because they were like, dude, go get us another pack of smokes. And I was like, nah, man, you got to know how to work it. You got to understand how to work the system because if I go make it noticeable that we're taking these things, then they're going to disappear. They're going to get locked up. If we just leave it alone until there's an emergency like there was last time, then they'll always be there if we have an emergency. So, but I talked them out of it. But the funny thing is those are the first guys who got me high. Those are the first guys who offered me alcohol. So, it's kind of funny how, I ended up becoming a cool kid just because I was willing to go snag a pack of cigarettes from my mom. And I was a troublemaker after that from that point forward, probably until I was in my mid-20s, early 20s, early 20s. Yeah, I was a hellion. Had a hell of a good time, though. Still do. If any of you guys saw on my Instagram the pictures of my daughter on her trip over to Oahu, it was for her 22nd birthday, but because she graduated college and everything. And her boyfriend has a friend that he grew up with who's been on living in Hawaii for 4 years. So they got an entirely different experience than the normal tourist experience. There's some good video of her skydiving, but some of the cool stuff is, you don't really think about it, but she got to go camping on the beach for a couple of nights. And, that's not something that you think about when you think about Hawaii. You think of the luau's and surfing and, hiking and doing some of those floats, like what JB and his family did. And a lot of the more touristy stuff. And all of their time was spent on the beach and climbing rocks and having a good time. So it's kind of cool because the point of me mentioning that is my kids are the same as I am. What's going on, Cheeto? My kids are the same as I am. They learned that if you don't chase the adventures, what's the point of all of the hard work? I mean, you save up and you got $2 million in the bank and then you freaking croak and you never get to go do all of those wonderful things that you were hoping you were going to get to do when you retired. So I've always been more of a, let's do it. Let's go have some fun. Just got to find the right balance. That's all. If it wasn't for those 3 ex-wives, man, dang. So I'll tell you, the gluten. The reason I started with the gluten is because that's probably my worst, even more than sugar. I started with the gluten because the breads and the cookies and the cakes, that's probably my biggest weakness, and I knew that, so I knew that was going to be the hardest one. But the crazy thing is cutting out all flour and flour byproducts and beer and all that stuff. The second day, about halfway through the day, I had a hell of a headache, and that finally went away after about 5 or 6 hours. But since then, I got to tell you, I've been feeling pretty freaking good. Now, here's the thing, Kyle. I'm gonna give this 30 days on the gluten free before I try and cut the sugar out. But that's my goal is the sugar and the gluten, and just kind of do more of a less processed food kind of eating. Nuggies, Dole Whip. See, I don't remember who gave me the idea. I think it was one of the Canadians. But after I had my heart attack, someone turned me on to this acai, and I'll tell you what, that's changed a little bit of how I snack in the evening time too, because making some of that stuff up and making it's always the Canadians. But I don't remember who told me about that. But I'll tell you what, I have that probably 2 or 3 times a week. Well, and I understand exactly what you're saying. I made a now here's one of the things that happens is you start trying some of these recipes and you realize when you take certain things out how much it changes. So I made a lasagna tonight that was gluten free. So instead of pasta, I did what a lot of the recipes call for. I used zucchini, and I went through the process like they said. And you're supposed to get all the water out of the zucchini before you put it all together. And the way to do that is with some salt. And I'm not a big salt person. I don't salt my food generally before I taste it. I use a little bit of salt in cooking if it calls for it. Prunes. I can still hit it 300 yards. So don't start with me. Don't start with me, Mister. Mister, your age. Yeah. There you go. But whatever happened, I go through this. I mean, I made like this thing is like freaking 5-pound zucchini lasagna, and I let it cool. Took the dogs for a walk, and I'm starting to get excited, And I get home and cut me a big old piece of it and slide and put it in a bowl. And holy crap, that's the worst thing I've ever cooked in my entire damn life. So apparently, because we were out of spaghetti sauce in a jar, I used some pizza sauce and some crushed tomatoes and some Italian seasoning, and apparently everything had freaking salt in it. And let me tell you what, it was terrible. I've got a box of it up in the cupboard, Todd. I just haven't tried it yet. The biggest thing that I think that I noticed, and it's one of the effects that I think a lot of people don't like, Palmer. I never feel like I'm full. Um, at least not as much. But I also don't feel after like the second or third day. I don't know. It's just kind of weird. It's a different kind of fulfilling. It shouldn't be available. So my last wife was a phenomenal cook, and I am not a fan of cauliflower. I've probably eaten it 3 or 4 times in the last 50 years. But she made a buffalo cauliflower that was supposed to be like a replacement for buffalo wings, and I think it was because she got the crisp on it just perfect. Um, but to me, that was kind of like putting ketchup on liver. You know, if you put enough stuff on it, you can make just about anything taste good. My mom used to always make us eat liver when my dad would go out to sea, and he'd be gone because she couldn't cook it when he was around because he hated it. So once he left and went out on a cruise, we'd be eating like liver once a week. And I hated liver. I hated it. And we would drown that stuff in as much freaking ketchup as we possibly could to try and get the flavor and the texture out of our mouth. That's why you're divorced, right? Trying to make wings out of BS. She was she lived in Texas long enough that she absorbed some Mexican into her and became a very good at making Mexican food. And then after Katrina hit, and all of these folks from Louisiana started evolving over towards our part of the country, she started picking up a lot of stuff from some of her new coworkers and started cooking Cajun. And I don't know, a chef could probably tell you this, but she was one of those people who could like watch somebody make a recipe on TV, like on Food Network, and then she wouldn't even have to write it down. She would just like internalize it and then go to the kitchen and make her version of it. But she also, unlike myself, understood a lot of things about the culinary arts. You know, as she was very knowledgeable. Um, she could cook like hell, man. Mm-mm-mm. And she wasn't afraid of spice. She liked cooking with peppers. I can recall multiple meals where I was like over a bowl of something just sweating. You got to do it with granola, bananas, blueberries, strawberries, and coconut shavings and honey. So I didn't use the honey, but I've got agave syrup. I've got the coconut. I've got the strawberries. Got the blueberries, and I'm not a big fan of bananas. And I don't think I can have a granola on gluten free. But you know, it's funny, Tina. My daughter said that it was very expensive in Hawaii, but one of the things that got them by was is every morning there was a food truck down by the beach where they were staying at, and the guy had a deal on all the weekdays where you could get two acai bowls for $20. And according to my daughter, as far as Hawaii prices go, $20 for two of anything is a damn good deal on a meal. Black pepper, old school. That's how I make my steaks. I've got a lot of other spices and stuff that I use if I do like briskets or pork butt or something like that. But when it comes to steaks, I'm just black pepper. I don't think I'm going to throw that lasagna away. I think I'm going to let it sit in the fridge overnight. Try it again tomorrow and see if that salt settles down. But my goodness. Happy birthday, Crispy. Ketchup can't save liver. Nope. You know, the only thing that came out of that whole liver thing when I was a kid is that's when I learned to like onions. In fact, I recall on more than one occasion I made a deal with my mom that if I finished my onions, I wouldn't have to eat my liver. Hell yeah. So I'm gonna guess Crispy is 58. 57. So close. Having a birthday on a holiday kind of sucks depending on the birthday or on the holiday. My son pulled one off pretty good. My wife went into labor 6 weeks early, and my son was born on Labor Day. Methodist Hospital in Indianapolis, Indiana. And one of the coolest things is on Labor Day in Indianapolis, they put on this huge fireworks show. And I can tell you, in all my travels, I've seen some pretty big shows, but the one that they put on in Indy on Labor Day is pretty huge. And out the window, as my wife was being admitted to the hospital, when we finally got in our room, we got there just in time to see the fireworks display. And then probably about 4 or 5 o'clock the next morning is when my son was born. It was a Labor Day baby. I was born 2 days after Valentine's Day. And I got the first tomatoes out of the garden yesterday. And little golden orange cherry tomatoes. And I pulled some basil and got some mozzarella and some balsamic. Delicious. So I tried something new this year in the garden. Speaking of beans, I planted 2 big vines of green beans. Jiminy Christmas, how many of those things you got to plant in order to be able to get enough green beans to make a meal? I've got 2 of these bushes going, and neither one of them has more than 20 or 30 beans on it. I guess you have to plant a whole patch of these things, huh? So I'll tell you a funny story. My mom, every time she travels and goes through an airport, which is probably once every year or two, but I've had diabetes or been pre-diabetic for the better part of 10 years. But every time my mom goes through the airport, she gets everyone in the family a box of See's candy because they don't have it in the mall here. And when we were in California, she used to love going to See's Candy and buying See's candy. My dad would always get it for her for her birthday and for Valentine's Day. But my mom, still to this day, buys me this big old expensive ass box of candy. I don't think she's trying to kill me. I'm pretty certain she loves me. Well, you know, the funny thing, Palmer, is my youngest, my stepson, he was the kid who, no matter where you went, and we didn't eat high end just because we weren't that kind of collar family. But we kind of tended to eat a variety of places because Austin's a very food town. And no matter where we went, even to this day, he's 20. He's just finishing up his sophomore year at UT. But even to this day, when I go meet him somewhere for lunch or we hang out, freaking chicken nuggets. It's been chicken nuggets since I met this kid when he was like 6. And it's just hilarious. Fresh peas are the only way you'll eat them. So when I was a kid, the only way that I would eat peas is my mom used to make creamed peas, and it was like peas in a white gravy with pepper. The main reason I planted them is because they were so up and vertical, and I had a couple of spots where they would fit. My tomatoes are doing killer. The one that's got me really interested is I was throwing some vegetables away from the refrigerator about 3 weeks ago, and there was a salad with some chopped tomatoes and some cherry tomatoes. So when I was throwing it away, I took those seeds and the seeds out of both of those tomatoes and um, put them in some dirt, put them by the window, and here we are 3 weeks later, and I've got some freaking tomatoes growing like crazy. And it's the first time I've done it that way. I've always bought them when they were about yay big, you know, just planted them. Open L Collector 41. uh, Happy birthday, Brant. For those of you who showed up late, my newest acquisition is a new to me Manix 2 with Metin Boss, Zerk scales, deep pocket clip, M4 blade. This thing is a beast. It might weigh, it seriously might weigh, I bet it's north of 4 ounces. I'd weigh it, but I don't own a scale. I trust my guy. So if you know anyone looking for a Manix 2 lightweight and Rex 45, hit me up. I'll make you a deal. You got it, boss. Good thing you were quick. Sometimes that old Marty jumps in there and goes dibs. Not you what? Not me? Open L Collective 41 is Marty. I'm not open now. No dibs from Marty. Hey, Brant. Who is that pretty girl that I saw a picture of you with over on your Facebook page last week? We're going to do a boom shaka day. I'm Violent J, and I'm back like a. Well, you know, interesting. I do like the blade, and I like the Manix too, as far as the size and everything. I really like the blade. I haven't really used it for much. But as you can imagine, I mean, it's slicey as hell. My only gripe about this knife personally was just the lightweight side of it. I'm not a lightweight guy. Yeah, that clip. If you stick this in your pocket wearing gym shorts, you're going to have gym shorts around your ankles. It's a heavy boy, but I like it. I see this one getting a lot of pocket time, especially in the winter time. Can I get Marty's favorite flavor of Fago for 600, Alex? So here's a funny Insane Clown Posse story. So we had this little group that lived in Westfield, Indiana, which is up in the Carmel, Indiana area. And they were your typical suburbanites, all upper middle class folks. And we came up with this little group called Fun Club. So Fun Club rotated every month. And then when it was your turn to host Fun Club, you'd have to come up with some crazy, goofy thing for your group to do. Well, usually it consisted of battle of the couples competitions, sometimes trivia related and a lot of drinking, sometimes competitive physical related, you know, like running and jumping and competitions and, you know, things like that. But it was always something fun. Sometimes you'd have to dress up. We did what do you call those hunts? Scavenger hunts out in the community. We rented limos to do scavenger hunts. But for one of the, it was around Halloween that we were hosting Fun Club, and out at the arena, outdoor arena in Noblesville, Indiana. We called it Deer Creek at the time. I don't know what it's called now, but they had 3 huge haunted houses. And you could go into all 3 of the haunted houses for like $25. But on like the 29th of October, if you bought a concert ticket to go see, and get this lineup, Vanilla Ice opening for Insane Clown Posse, you got free admission to all 3 of the haunted houses. So this was definitely a group of suburban people who were probably big fans of Vanilla Ice. Not so much ICP. So the funniest freaking thing was, after we got done doing all of the haunted houses, I think some of the people in our group started realizing that a lot of the people that were around us weren't there and dressed up because of Halloween. They had a totally different thing going on because they started seeing all the people dressed up for the ICP show. Well, all these people hung out and watched Vanilla Ice, and it only took about 1 song of Insane Clown Posse coming on, and we lost about 80% of the crew. They were not ICP people. They were not Insane Clown Posse people. It was pretty funny. No tattoos. Now, I think where the, where the whole Geo thing came in is, if you've ever been in a parking lot of a truck stop late at night, you realize pretty quick why they have glory holes, because them is some ugly women's. Them is some really, really, really ugly women's. And the other thing that you notice when you get around the truck stops, that's also where all the adult bookstores are at. That's right. And someone has to keep everyone safe. Someone has to help set regulations. And in a world as silly as the one that we're living in right now, it doesn't seem so far-fetched, does it? Chief Officer of Glory Hole Safety. You can put that on your business card and smoke it. Coochie coochie goo. Coochie coochie goo. CGO, baby. All right, kids. It's been a pleasure. Got a little bit of work to do on the computer, and I got bowling in the morning. I will say today was the most beautiful day I've seen. This time of year here, we get a lot of clouds, and it's very humid and very sweaty. But today it was like low humidity. Shit, I put on a tank top when I went and walked the dogs earlier, and usually I don't walk them during the day. Usually I walk them early in the morning before I go to bed when it's dark out, and then I walk them usually around 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Because with those pugs, you have to do some stuff and make sure this hot weather is tough on them, especially with the humidity. Thanks for coming and hanging out. Appreciate y'all. Go check out that Kaimano Shreve Manganas. I'm digging it. Go check out. $36G in the ballroom. Edgy Blade Works. And go over and check out Edgy Blade Works Instagram. Like I said, he just finished up the second Astral. And then 4 or 5 days before that, he posted one of those grunts that he finished up for Blade Show. I know, I'm not sure if, is Sharif going to Blade? I think he is. I'll have to find out what booth he's at. No, I'll shout that out next week. But, I need to put some new stickers up on my board. Do that this week too. All right, y'all. We'll see you out there. Peace. For you, Marty.